Well, we've got Mr. Parks out there, just got him situated. He's heading on home. We just need to take the mulching blade off. His grass is so thick and so healthy because he has it sprayed and everything. It's too thick for that mulching blade and for him to be able to mow in a faster gear. So we put the regular blade on, took the mulching block off, and he's going to mow like that the rest of the season until the leaves start falling. Then we'll put the mulching blade back on, and he knows to mow in a slower speed in order to take care of those. But you see, I've got the pretty Sunstar tore apart here. The reason is right here. We've got our old line, which is right here. This is the one that was bad, and it's hard to see the spot, but no, it's not that hard, I guess. You see that crack right there? That's where that one was leaking. So went to Biggie Rats and picked up all the Sunstar and Deutz Alice Ultima hoses that he had, and I'll take the ones that I don't use back to him, but we're just replacing that one hose that was leaking, and then we'll be ready to put the loader on this Sunstar. I don't know that I'll be doing that today, but I did want to get this ready to do that soon. So this is the line that goes from the back of the power steering cylinder up to, see if I can point it out with a wrench here, up to that fitting right there. So that's what we're getting ready to do. I'm going to go ahead and just get the hose in, and then I'll give you guys a walkthrough. There's not a whole lot of videos on these Sunstars on YouTube, and when I do go to do the loader, I will be sure to do my level best to cover every step of that. And also, I've got a legacy snow blade, front blade, that I'm going to adapt to another one of the Sunstars, and I have a Sunstar snow cab. So I've got a bunch of Sunstar content that will come in when time permits. But for right now, I'm gonna get this hose on. I'll get everything put back together. I'll show you everything these guys have and everything that they do. They're pretty capable machines. So we'll see you guys here very shortly. All right, before we wrap it up, I'll just go ahead and show you here. I've got that line in. It's the one next to the one with the hose clamp on it. It just comes down, mounts to the rear of the cylinder. That's the replacement line, and we haven't tested it yet to see if it's leaking. So I do have some air to purge. I didn't lose a lot of oil, but I lost a little bit. So we'll be sure to check that, but I'll cover all that when we do our walk around here shortly. For right now, let's start her up and see if we've got oil spraying or we took care of that leak. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Contact. I see no leaks, but I'll monitor it as time allows. I need to get a zip tie on that, make it look more factory. Of course, it'll be a white zip tie, but that's okay. And then we'll take a walk around this thing. So I'm gonna leave these side covers off just to show you some of the internals and what's going on in there, and then we'll put everything back together and I will continue with the walkthrough on these. They're pretty amazing machines, very capable. Sit tight. Alright, now here on the Zippo wrench I've got every variation that was offered excuse me, as far as engine availability on the Simplicity Sunstars and the Deutz Ultimas. As you can see, this is an opposed twin. It is the Kohler Magnum, just pressure lube. And I had a comment about the oil filter. Yes, I'm going to do the oil change here directly, but I don't want that frame on there any more than anybody else does. This is the nicest example of all of them, but they're all pretty decent. They actually take an automotive battery bigger than a 51R, which is what the Sovereign class tractors would take. This particular one has a single hydraulic cylinder, and it is a lift for just the center. But with a kit, you can also put a sleeve hitch on the back, and I will show you one. Put a sleeve hitch on the back for raising and lowering rear mounted implements. You can also mount a rear PTO to these with another kit and be able to run a shaft driven tiller. I'll come around here and I'll squat down and I'll show you. The hydro pump on these is a Sunstar, and it's a peerless transmission. This particular transmission has the 2-speed high and low with differential lock. I'll show you those here in just a second. There's a cover that goes on back here. This is just not on it right now, but if we look way back here, see if I can get this flashlight to stay somewhere. That'll work. Okay, I took you guys way up in there. You see right there that aluminum fin, and then the end of it is a splined shaft. Well, I would have to change the gas tank out because this bump in the gas tank right here would impede on the area that the rear PTO would mount to, and it's electric clutch just like the front, but it mounts right here, right on top of the transmission. It's bolted to either side of the frame, and the frames on these are good and thick, almost 3/16 inch steel. We are running dual drum brakes, drum brake on this side, drum brake on this side, and just like the big boy tractors, you are capable of steering with the brakes. All you have to do is lift that off, and that gives you left and right braking capabilities. If you don't need left and right braking capabilities, you can just stomp on both of them at the same time. But here's a neat little trick about these. With them stuck together like that, if I move this hydro lever up and I step on both of them, it moves the hydro lever back to neutral. Okay, but if I just simply take the lever off so that they're running independently, now I can push and get the right brake, and I come over and I push and I can get the left brake, and the hydro lever stays still. A little bit of witchcraft trickery and linkage going on underneath there that allows that, but when they're both pressed at the same time, it will throw that to neutral, just like that. Okay, this particular one has a fuel gauge, an hour meter, and a voltmeter. Unlike the older ones that had the amp meters, some of the newer Sovereign class had hour meters. This particular one has 860 hours on it, and earlier models of the Sovereign class would have had an amp meter and no gas gauge. Not all of these had a gas gauge. Not all of these had a 2-speed transmission and a diff lock. Not all of these even had a 2-speed transmission, and I've got variations of each out here on the property that I'll show you. So many different varieties, all dependent on what your uses are. On the front, you have a front PTO for running implements like a snowblower, and that same shaft that you can see splined right there is also under here. Let me get the light so you guys can see. It is also right there. That one right there runs the mower deck, and it runs it off of that PTO with a drive shaft that goes to a bevel gearbox to spin the blades. Some of these have 2 left turning blades and 1 right turning blade. Some of them have all left turning blades. Depends on the deck. I know, strange. Why they did it was just so the grass would exit the deck. The discharges are on the left side of these. 48-inch and a 60-inch were available. Then you had tire options as well. These are the smaller 16 6.5/8. You could also have 18 6.5/8 or 18 8.5/8. And we'll talk about the back tires here in a second. Sorry about that. My grocery getter was calling me and I had to stop the camera real quick. Tire options for the rear. There are numerous. 23 10.5 12s. You can run either the 60-inch deck or the 48-inch deck using the 23 10.5 12s with no problem on any of them. This is a specialty Carlisle Tire, big fat wide suckers. You guys may have remembered these being on Trader. The black ones were on Trader. These are, they're mounted backwards so that the dish is facing the opposite way. That's the way that these mount. So instead of you seeing this from the outside, you see that from the outside. Okay? But those are 24 13 12s. You can run both the 48-inch deck and the 60-inch deck with these tires. But if you jump up to 26 12 12s, like these ag tires here, you cannot run the 60-inch deck, but you can run the 48-inch deck. So, and all those tire options were available on these. Kind of crazy. Let's see, what do we talk about now? Some were power steering, some were manual steering. All of the examples I have are power steering examples, and not all of them have the gas gauges. I'll show you those. But like I said, we've got a Kohler Magnum in this one. There's a Kohler Magnum 18 and a Kohler Magnum 20. This is the Kohler Magnum 20 hydrostatic drive. They have a really neat cooling system for the hydro pump. Since there's no fan on the pump itself, the pump actually sits right there, and it's a direct drive shaft going from the engine. You can see just a little bit of it down there, right down there. It's shining a little bit. Direct drive straight back to the hydro. What you have up front are 4 bolts that bolt directly into the flywheel, and then you have a splined shaft like what would be on a transmission tail shaft. You'd have the splined yoke that would go on. That's what this setup is here, and it's allowed to slip in and out a little bit, just like a regular transmission slip yoke drive shaft. So then you've got this big round cooling fin. How that works is the air that is blown across the engine to keep the engine cool is actually drawn in from back underneath the tractor, okay, from this cavity under here. It gets pulled up in, it gets pulled through, and as it pulls through, this diverter right here that I showed you guys will pull it. That diverter just kind of seals this area off, because you've got a vacuum that's created here because it's pulling the air that way, and so the air pulls down this way to keep your hydro cool. Much more efficient keeping your hydro cool in this manner than just having a plastic fan sitting on top of it. They have headlights. This particular one has LEDs. I put LEDs in it. Another nice, very nice touch is to fill your hydrostat, and I'll show you how to check it in a second, but to fill it if you need more fluid, and it just takes regular transmission fluid, Dextron, but you just take that cap off and you can add your fluid, your hydro fluid right there. Easiest spot in the world to add hydraulic fluid. Now, since we're over here on this side, we'll talk a little bit about what we've got over here. Your fuel line comes in over here. Your hydro lift comes in over here, which is that lever. That's your lift cylinder that raises and lowers your center mounted implements. There is a second lever and hydro lines that can be installed to give you two ports for the front that will run the hydraulic angle from the seat snow blade. This does not have it, but it would be two levers, a lever here and a lever here, and that's why there's this open space on the outside of where this lever is mounted right here, because that lever would go right there. And you would just have another lever coming up, one handle point one way, one handle point in the other, similar to the John Deere 3 and 400 series. Now we'll come around to the back and I'll show you how easy it is to check the hydraulic fluid level. It's as simple as finding that little plastic tube right there and seeing what your fluid level is. And I can tell by looking I'm a little bit low, so I lost some when I changed that line out, so I'm going to add some to it. And as per the manual, you just bring it up to about 1 inch above the elbow, just 1 inch, and you'll be able to see it quite clearly when you have it in there. There's also a hydraulic oil filter that is just below the hydrostat in the front of the transmission. I'll show you that. Just hanging out right there. Right there. Okay? You see these chains hanging here. Those chains are what are attached to your rock shaft for lifting and lowering your center mount implement. There are two accesses on the rock shaft. One is for the deck. The other is to allow you to run a lift rod to the front to lift either a snowblower or to lift your snow blade. Snow blades go on very, very easily too. Got this little setup down here. The snow blade has pins that are fixed, welded to the bracket that slide into here. Once those slide into there, then you put clevis pins in either side and the blade's on. Then all you have to do is run your lift arm from the hydro and you're off and running to the races, being able to lift and lower. The blade that I'll be putting on one of these is a manual blade. So we have talked about the Kohler Magnum 20. Let's go see what other engines we've got that were offered in these old Sunstars. Alright, we're coming up on a later model Sunstar. This one's rough and ragged and beat up and tore up and any other word you can put into it. But this one is a 20 horse Kohler Command powered with pressure lube oil. This one also has the voltmeter, the hour meter, and the fuel gauge. And this one amazingly has 2,028 hours on it. So let me get the bag out of the way here. That's just to keep the electronics dry because I don't have the diverter in there. I do have the diverter, it's just not in there. And this one does not charge, but that's alright. We're going to get that taken care of. Pull the choke out, give her a crank. Got to pull some fuel up. Hadn't been started in a while. It's got a little bit of a tick to it. It's got a lot of hours on it. That front PTO is present on this one. Did an oil change on this one and serviced it. I do have a flat tire though. I really wore out flat tire. But there's engine option number 2 right there. That's the Kohler Command instead of the Magnum. The same engine is in the zip loader tractor, but the zip loader tractor came with the larger tire options, so you can see, maybe we'll compare the size of this tire to that tire. See how much bigger they are? Those are the front tires. 18 8.5 eighths. And the backs are 26 12 12s with very wide rims. 20 horse front, PTO only, but obviously it has the loader on it. Now this one unfortunately only has high and low, as can be seen right there. Just high and low, no differential lock. So because there's no differential lock, if I get an unbalanced load on the loader and one tire goes light on me, it's going to spin. There's nothing I can do about it, because with the loader on you can only have one brake pedal mounted, and because there's only one brake pedal mounted, and the way that everything is put back together after you remove the pedal, because this is the outboard brake that is actually moved inboard. You take the inboard brake pedal completely out, the left brake pedal completely out, and then install the right brake pedal. It operates both brakes. Because it operates both brakes, it throws the transmission into neutral regardless. Push it up there and I'll show you. It just pushes it right on back. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's why it's nice to have a loader on a tractor that has the differential lock, and why it's going on that Magnum powered. Like I said, this is a Kohler Courage, the same as the Ugly Duckling over there. This one also has the voltmeter, the hour meter at 1,388 hours, and the fuel gauge. This one runs really nice. There we go. Now we come over to an oddball. This one's 18 horsepower, but it is not powered by a Kohler. Nope, 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 it is not. And because of the dimensions of the engine and how the engine is installed, it has an extra bit of protection for the hydro. And this one actually screws on. You see right here, there's our screen. So it pulls fresh air in from the vents. I said from the bottom, I meant from the top, I'm sorry. That's why that screen mesh is there, so it pulls air in from the top, good clean air. This one has a boot that goes all the way around between the engine and the firewall and oil cooler. Briggs Vanguard 18 horsepower. So yep, I have one of each flavor. I also have one of each flavor of transmission type. This one does not have a high or low gear or diff lock, either one. Nothing. Not even any holes. Absolutely nothing. The only way you can get this one to free roll, like with these, you put them in between high and low. This one, if you push that lever down, it depresses two buttons like the Sovereigns. In the Sovereign class, it pushes two buttons down to bypass the hydro. That's the only way that you can roll this. So there you go. Those are 3 different style transmissions, 3 different engines, and a basic just a quick basic explanation of what a lot of the functions are. Of course, there's a lot more. I'll go over and show you the deck and how the deck attaches to the front PTO. Told you about the tire options. This one being an 18 horse. Typically the 18 horse, like the Magnum 18 and the Vanguard 18, are the entry-level Sunstars and Ultimas. Just depends on the year. The Ultimas were no longer being made when this generation of Sunstar came out, but they were with the white decal sided Sunstars, spanning I think 1985. The years that of all manufacturer years for these was 1985 to, what was it, 1985 to 1996 or 97, somewhere around there. Not exactly positive, but you can look over here and you can see that this one does have the back panel on it that is not on the one inside the shop. And you guys see me walking around something that looks weird? That is a wheat drill, and a buddy of mine picked it up for a Boland's Ride-O-Matic, and it hooks right there, and it's a seed planter with a fertilizer box. It was barn kept for a long time, and he's gonna either leave it like it is and put it behind a ratty looking Ride-O-Matic that he has not restored, or he's going to restore it, depending on whether the bolts argue with him a lot or not. Hopefully he'll be able to restore it, because I know that's the kind of thing that he would rather do. So there you go. There are the Sunstars, a lot of their differences, and I suppose we can go ahead and quickly talk about the front axle, because the front axle is welded to the frame. The way that this axle works is really interesting. In fact, give me a minute. I'm going to jack the front of this up. I'm going to show you how these axles pivot. Okay, most garden tractors have a central pivot location with a single pin that goes into the axle, and the entire axle moves up and down. Not so on this. Watch when I move one wheel up and down. Watch what happens over there. Ready? You're probably saying, well, that's not a solid axle. It absolutely is. There are 2 pins that hold each of these pieces of cast iron in on either side. You got a pin here and a pin here. Okay? This pin goes through this plate. That plate is connected to both of the bottom sides of the axle. So if you watch that slot right there, you'll see that it moves back and forth and keeps these moving in tandem. How cool is that? Isn't that just nifty? I thought so. Pretty ingenious. Over time, these pins get wore down. You have to replace the pins and rebush the, I guess, spindle carrier would be the best way to describe that. Control arm. I mean, it's just one, it's not two, but at any rate, there's that. So now let's quickly go out and look at the deck, or the decks rather, and show you how they operate. See, unlike the deck on this one is belt driven, okay? If you had a deck on that, it would be shaft driven. They used two different gearboxes, and I don't know if I have one of each out here or not, but we'll check and see. But here's one box, okay? When you're ready to mow, you pull this collar back, just like you would on a PTO shaft for a bush hog on the back of a big boy tractor type of thing, right? Pull that, slide it on, because this is in a slip yoke. This one might not slide. No, that one's not going to slide for us because it's been sitting a while. But that will rotate. When it rotates a single pulley down here. Then you have a set of pulleys on your deck. And depending on if you have the one left blade, or two left blade and one right blade, or if you have all left turning blades. When I say left, anti-clockwise, counterclockwise. Then it will all depend on the way the belt is routed in order to make the deck have one blade that goes one way, one that goes the other. That's a 60-inch deck back there, a 48-inch here. This one's a really nice deck. And this one also has the pulley on it to run the turbofan for a leaf vac system. This handle here that is zip tied would bolt here so that you can set your height adjustment, and then it just goes on with two pins up front, and then you have the hangers. There's a hanger here. This hanger has fallen off, but it looks the same as that. It's just a matter of putting another one on. This one is tied down too, but they just, as it turns, the blades turn. Pretty neat and nifty. And we have another 48-inch deck down here. This deck and this deck, they're both in really good shape. The 60-inch, it works, but you can see the pulley is all blown out right there. So it's more or less a parts deck. This one still has the belt shields on it. The others have them taken off. Some people leave them off because it makes it easier to clean them. Other people put them on. I'm the type that keeps them on. I don't get a whole lot of grass that ingresses up underneath the shields. So pretty heavy duty stuff. Pretty heavy duty stuff. They have a, I think it's a 4.2 gallon gas tank. It might be a little bit different on those that don't have the rear PTO type gas tank, like this one here that has the bulge. It may be a little bit bigger. But my battery is about to die on me, and I've talked an awful lot about Sunstars. And if you guys have any questions about Sunstars, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. And it won't be long, and the loader will be getting put on this tractor. So you guys can stay tuned for that. Probably October or November, somewhere in that time frame. But the first thing I'm going to do is get a blade, snow blade mounted to one of the Sunstars. So we'll do that one first, then we'll probably do the loader. So that's it. Friendly Neighborhood Zippo. Promise you guys. I'll see you when I see you.